Now, because we're closing in on November and then eventually December, the end of 2025 is usually the end of the bull run cycle based on the 4-year market cycle theory. But the final leg up doesn't start when everyone's bullish. It starts when the doubters have quit and when they've been shaken out of the markets and when they've sold their bags. And only then will the market go higher. And there's an ungodly infinite amount of money in the market, the treasury, that will need a home as interest rates come down. Gold is topped. Tech stocks are overvalued. Every asset, bank account, country, and business is moving to crypto. An adoption to 50x, and it's oversold, Alex Becker is saying. It's so effing obvious. And while it might seem like the crypto market is overvalued, well, the market cap of this whole industry is only $3.7 trillion. You compare that to just gold, depending on when you're watching this video, it's anywhere between $22 to $30 trillion, almost 10x for one asset, let alone the entire industry of crypto. Crypto can go so much higher in the blink of an eye. And JP Morgan is expecting the Federal Reserve to end quantitative tightening by next week. This is massive because every single time that the Fed goes to quantitative easing and they start printing more money, then investors get aggressively bullish on risk-on assets. You can see the last time that this happened, 2020 to 2021, we saw others to Bitcoin explode to the upside. And so with the quantitative tightening that's been taking place on the Fed's balance sheet since 2022, we've seen a bull run thus far during QT. The last bull run in 2021 was during QE, quantitative easing, when they were adding to their balance sheet with near zero interest rates. So yes, this time is different, knowing that this bull run is taking place with quantitative tightening, with higher interest rates. I mean, if you guys remember correctly, 2021 was the stimulus checks after COVID. And so others, on the chart right here, this yellow chart is the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. You can see it mirrored it pretty closely with a little bit of an offset here. By what looked like September of 2019, the Federal Reserve balance sheet bottomed right around the exact same time that others bottomed relative to Bitcoin. And then on this expansion, on this yellow chart right here, others expanded as well. And then you saw this little pullback in the Fed's balance sheet. Well, shortly after that, there was a pullback in others too. Then a final expansion to the peak. And then sure enough, look at others chart with this expansion all the way up here to the peak, almost identical, right? And it topped out on the balance sheet. And then shortly after that, others topped out right after. And so we have seen others drastically underperform Bitcoin in this downtrend here because the Federal Reserve has been retracting on their balance sheet. So now that the Federal Reserve is likely to start adding to their balance sheet again, could that mean that others are ready to break out from this long-awaited downtrend with these lower highs and lower lows? I think that's what's coming next. So there could potentially be a little more to the downside depending on when the Federal Reserve balance sheet actually bottoms out. But then once it starts trending back to the upside, I personally believe, which I could be wrong here, and I'm okay with being wrong, but we look at the data, right? We look at the facts, and that's how we form our opinions. But I believe others will start to break out. And in order for others to break out, we would need to see a few key things happen here. And I'll explain them in a little bit on Bitcoin's dominance price chart. But one of the main things just from the technicals we would need to see is the stochastic RSI to get a little bit closer to zero. So we're at 24 and 1.57. We're in a downtrend right now on the stochastic RSI with the price chart. So I'd want to see this bottom out first and then form a bullish cross where the blue line crosses above the orange line. So that's the K line crossing above the D line here. Also, the relative strength index is at 37 right now. So there's a little more momentum to the downside, and I think a reversal is coming. Now, the reason why I say there's a little more momentum to the downside is because Bitcoin is having momentum to the upside. Even looking at Bitcoin's dominance here, we've been in this uptrend for Bitcoin's dominance since the 13th of September. And if we bring up the 200 EMA and the 50 EMA, we saw this death cross right here when the 50 crossed below the 200 in this downtrend. And now that the 50 is turning back to the upside and the price or the dominance chart is going back to the upside, we could potentially face some resistance here at the 200, but that's all the way up that's at 60%. So Bitcoin has a little more room to the upside. Plus on the daily chart, you can see that we experienced a bullish cross here on the stochastic RSI, all the way down at 11. And now we're turning up. We've confirmed the bullish cross past 20. So we're not in overbought conditions on Bitcoin's dominance on the stochastic RSI above 80. The relative strength index is at 59. We're not above 70 to 100 yet. So it shows that Bitcoin's dominance still has room to climb. And it also shows that others, if I just clear the chart right here, still has a little bit of room to fall. So that's why it's safer right now to be in Bitcoin, because in order for altcoins to do well, we would first need to see Bitcoin break out. I mean, if Bitcoin does not break out, if Bitcoin doesn't just go parabolic and break past its high, or at least clear, $114,000, then the likelihood of altcoins breaking out is very slim to none, because Bitcoin has been getting sold off, right? When Bitcoin gets sold off, like what happened in that leverage flush and that manipulation, altcoins like took the punch on the face more than Bitcoin, and Bitcoin just saw it as another walk in the park for another like daily or weekly sell-off that wasn't that drastic. So if Bitcoin experiences a sell-off to the downside, again, you know that altcoins are going to bleed out even more. But there's one thing that I can see on Bitcoin's chart that actually makes me more bullish right now, that Bitcoin is going to see more appreciation to the upside, and that's this bullish divergence that's played out ever since the 10th of October until the 17th of October. And so on this sell-off for Bitcoin down to $109,000, we saw this short-term relief rally followed by continuation down for a lower low on the price chart. And the relative strength index bottomed out here at 19 on that first sell-off. On that initial recovery rally, the RSI popped up to 50, and then it dropped with the chart and formed a higher low on the RSI. Now, that is a bullish divergence, and that's generally a leading sign of a reversal. And these bullish divergences could play out for a while. For example, like we could see lower lows on the price chart and then we see a bounce. So nobody knows, and you don't need to know when that reversal takes place. You just need to watch for confirmation on the price chart of a trend change. And you need to watch these resistance. You need to watch the support too. So what I usually see when we see this reversal take place in these revival patterns is once the low's in, we see it break a descending resistance like what happened recently. And then we see it just consolidate, either on top of it, doing something like this, or forming higher lows or equal lows to the lowest low. And so that's what we've seen right here, while the relative strength index starts to form higher lows between 50 and 30. And so this is a sign that Bitcoin could make a much more aggressive move after it's done consolidating through this range here. And coincidentally enough, Trump is making an announcement 40 minutes from right now. So we'll see if that creates a positive, appreciation for Bitcoin to the upside. And then we'll see how the insiders or the whales create some sort of manipulation sell-off, closing the long positions. So I would just expect volatility in the short term for Bitcoin leading into Trump's announcement here. But nonetheless, on the technicals here, the stochastic RSI has formed a bullish cross. We're at 48 and 39 on the stochastic. We're not up here yet on both the RSI and the stochastic, above 70 or 80, close to 100. And it tells me that Bitcoin, even if there's volatility here in the short term, I think Bitcoin has room to the upside to run before we see, a much bigger correction for Bitcoin. So the bottom could quite potentially be in right here at $103,000. And Raoul Paul posted this saying Bitcoin and gold have a 188-day lead. And in my previous videos, I've talked about how gold pulling back has caused liquidity rotation into Bitcoin. So with gold breaking out to drastic new all-time highs and Bitcoin lagging behind, Bitcoin could be catching up over the next couple months. And another major catalyst of this could potentially be the crypto market structure bill. Listen to what billionaire Mike Novogratz just said.
Our government continues to spend way more money than they should. And I think as long as the debasement of fiat currencies goes on, crypto is going to be seen and Bitcoin is going to be seen. But, we're in a rangy, softer range right now. And I don't see what changes that. There's a bill in DC that needs to get passed, hopefully in the next 6 weeks. If that does, I think that'll give crypto a real jolt to the upside. That, and as we get closer, every day we wake up is one day closer to the Fed governor transition. And, my base case is still we get a much more dovish, malleable Fed governor than we've had in the past.
And sure enough, around the same time, CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, is saying that both parties are working hard to pass the crypto market structure bill by next month.
I'm back in DC, and even though the government is shut down, the Senate is working hard on getting market structure legislation passed for crypto, which is great to see. I attended some meetings this morning with both the Senate Dems, the Senate Republicans, and I'd say they're 90% on the same page. There's draft text being shared back and forth between both parties. Both sides want to get this done. That last 10%, there's a couple remaining issues open, like, for instance, DeFi. We want to make sure that we're pushing to protect DeFi and all the innovation potential that can have, and that the centralized intermediaries in crypto, like Coinbase, should be regulated, not the protocols. And then, of course, we're making sure to preserve stablecoin rewards for you as well. The big banks are coming for their cash grab, trying to block that, even though it was just recently decided in the Genius Act, which just recently became law. We're not going to let them relitigate that. So with these last few issues getting wrapped up, we're hoping to see this bill by come out of committee by Thanksgiving. That would be a great outcome. Fingers crossed. We're going to keep showing up for your rights, and we'll keep you updated.
So this is a great sign for November and December that we could end this bull run really strong with new all-time highs. Plus, the U.S. national debt just hit a record $38 trillion. So with the debt climbing through the roof, that just means crypto looks more and more bullish.